Yo, this is Set with Set Media, guys, and I'm back with another one for you. All right, guys, we're going to jump right into it with JD Vance taking questions with this press conference. Don't forget to double tap that screen, like the video, and we're also going to get into Thomas Massey's loss as well and the Moss mass shooting. Let's get right into it, guys, and don't forget to like the video.
Really, for the last 20 or so years, would disappear overnight. If you have every country in the world scrambling to try to get a nuclear weapon, it would make us all much less safe. And Iran would really be the first domino and what would set off a nuclear arms race all over the world. That's very, very bad for the safety of our country. As the father of 3 young kids, I don't want them to inherit a world where 20 additional regimes, half of them very dangerous and very sympathetic to terrorists, have nuclear weapons. We want to keep the number of countries that have nuclear weapons small, and that's why Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon on top of.
And like I said, we all agree that we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but these acts of aggressions only push them closer. So if you want to make sure that they don't have one, well, acts of aggression seems to only give us the opposite of what we want.
Of all the other things that we might be worried about, that they themselves could use it, that they could use it in leverage and economic control or economic negotiations. Right. We just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. Now, what we did here is that we effectively degraded their conventional military capability. That has been done. That has been successfully done. You could always do a little bit more, but where we are now is the president has asked us, has told us.
Yeah, and according to U.S. intelligence, we could have did way more. Like, we could have did way more than what we done. Especially since they retain over like 70% of their pre-war missiles.
To aggressively negotiate with the Iranians. Why did I go to Islamabad, Pakistan? Why did I spend, I think, probably 22 hours on a plane going there, 24 hours coming back, and then 21 hours on the ground negotiating with the Iranians? Is because we wanted to show a sign of good faith. The Vice President of the United States is willing to cut a deal so long as the Iranians are willing to meet us again on that core issue of never having a nuclear weapon. We think that we've made a lot of progress. We think the Iranians want to make a deal. The President of the United States has asked us to negotiate in good faith, and that's exactly what we've done. So we're in a pretty good spot here, but there's an option B. And the option B is that we could restart the military campaign to continue to prosecute the case, to continue to try to achieve America's objectives. And we could talk a little bit about what that looks like, but that's not what the president wants. And I don't think it's what the Iranians want either. We have an opportunity here, I think, to reset the relationship that has existed between Iran and the United States for 47 years. That's what the president has asked us to do, and that's what we're going to keep on working at. But it takes 2 to tango.
Yeah, but here's the problem, though. If we want to reset, then we're going to have to get down with the fact that our acts of aggressions have only caused distrust, and it only makes them want to keep their 60% enrichment. And if we want to have, start making them lean off that, start making them kind of lean our way towards, not being able to enrich at all or not just having 60% enrichment, then we have to show them that we're not going to attack them, because the only reason why they have that is because we constantly use acts of aggression against them. And they notice this. And we've been doing this, well, for about 47 years. So, yeah, this is one of the main reasons why they've even enriched uranium, because of our constant acts of aggression. And maybe if we eased up on it a bit and could then come to the negotiation table, then we could probably get some concessions from them, since they won't see us as such a big threat.
We are not going to have a deal that allows the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon. So as the president just told me, we're locked and loaded. We don't want to go down that pathway, but the president is willing and able to go down that pathway if we have to. So with that, I will say thank you all. It's cool to be here. I'm going to give a shout out, of course, to the person I am replacing today, Carolyn Levitt, who hopefully is at home enjoying some time with her beautiful kids. I told Carolyn I would stand in for her today for the White House press briefing on the condition that when Usha has our baby in July, that she would be vice president for a couple weeks. So thank you, guys. And I actually want to start first with Nick from Breitbart. Nick, it's good to see you.
Vice President, thank you. Today we saw the president endorse Ken Paxton over John Cornyn in the Texas Senate race. Do you think that sends a message going forward for the next cycle to senators, considering running for re-election, or any mega-aligned potential candidates that are considering challenging them?
Well, I'd say a couple things, Nick. First of all, I think the president's very gratified by the response that he's heard from the base and from a lot of voters, I think, who are passionate about Ken Paxton. We think Ken Paxton is going to be a great senator for the people of Texas, but most importantly, a great United States senator who can work on solving the problems that all of us confront as a country together. I've known John Cornyn for a long time, but unfortunately, when it really counted, Ken Paxton was there for the country, was there for the president, and that's why he ultimately earned the president's endorsement. He thinks he's going to be a better senator, thinks he's going to make a better candidate. And so I do think it sends a message, but really not just the endorsement, but one of the things the president has done very effectively, going back 10 years in his leadership of the Republican Party and the country as president of the United States, is he said, I want people who fight for the good. I want people who can't be bought by corporate lobbyists, who can't be bought by Wall Street.
Yeah, when we just had a literal election get bought out by corporations, get bought out by APAC, get bought out by Muriel Adelson, a gambling mogul. So it's kind of crazy how he sits there and talk about we don't want people that could be bought out when we literally just had an election. We watched an election get bought out before our eyes. I mean, but shout out Thomas Massey. He took the L gracefully.
Street who can't be bought by special interests, who are going to go to Washington and fight for the people who actually elected them to those positions. And I think one of the things we've seen in the Republican Party, while I can't say that all of our representatives are perfect or all of our senators are perfect, we have seen a much better crop of talent come into Washington since Donald Trump has been the leader of the party and the leader of the movement. I do think we're going to continue to see that happening. But I think the message that people should take from this is fundamentally, you have got to serve the people who sent you. And if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself.
Nah, I ain't gonna lie, Bison. Look, dog, I'm trying to play it off. I'm not even gonna lie. I was low-key disappointed when I woke up and I found out bro lost. I was like, I had a feeling, but they put like $10 million behind his opponent. And I don't know how the voters of Kentucky didn't see right through that. Like, obviously, they're trying to buy us. Let's show them that we can't be bought out as voters and vote for the guy that has the least funding. It's crazy how they wasn't able to see through that facade of politics. And it just disheartens the American people because we're just sitting here like, well, damn, who can beat these donors? They literally just bought a seat right before our eyes. And obviously, Thomas Massey was the better candidate, but F all that. We just care about who got more money behind them. Is that what our voting has been reduced to? But hey, it is what it is. And we'll get more into it later. But hey, man, appreciate the support, big dog.
Out of step with voters or out of step with the president of the United States. And that's not a good place to be politically.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just following up on what you just said, you said that the White House is negotiating with Iran in good faith. I think Americans tend to believe.
Now, what he means by good faith is pretty much like, it's not really good faith. Let's just be real. Let's just be real, guys. What he means by good faith is that Iran's not going to bend a knee. They're not going to concede to all of our demands. Like, that's good faith. That's what he's talking about. My bad. I said not. I mean, Iran will concede to all of our demands. That's what he means by good faith, not meeting in the middle like what we mean by having a good faith debate or a good faith conversation where we understand that neither side can get whatever they want. So we have to meet in the middle. I mean, bro, what America means by good faith is that, no, you take all of our demands, you do it, and we give you nothing. That's good faith.
But what is it about the Iranian side that you personally have seen where you believe that they are negotiating with us in good faith?
Well, first of all, I'd say it's a very complicated country, and it's a country that I wouldn't pretend that I understand even after as deep as I've been involved in this process from the very beginning. It's a great and proud civilization, amazing people. We obviously have a great Iranian American community here in the United States of America, smart people, very hardworking, and you see some of that in the negotiating team on the other side. You also see some very hardline positions in the negotiating team on the other side. And so I think you see that conflict, the fact that maybe the Iranians aren't themselves quite clear in what direction they want to go to. They also are just a fractured country. So you have the leadership of the country, there's the supreme leader, and then there are a lot of officials below the supreme leader that has some influence in the negotiation. It's not sometimes totally clear what the negotiating position of the team is. And I don't know if that's sometimes bad communication, if that's bad faith. I wouldn't pretend to venture a guess there, but I will say with confidence, it's sometimes hard to figure out exactly what it is that the Iranians want to accomplish out of the negotiation. So what we've done is tried to be.
I mean, JD Vance, bro, I could tell you what they want to accomplish. They want to make sure that you guys will not attack them no more, okay? They want to make sure that the U.S. will never strike Iran. They want to make sure that they can get some type of sanction relief so their currency stops crashing. That's what they want. They want to make sure that we'll stop effing with them military-wise and economically-wise. That's what they want, bro. I mean, it's written right in their demands. I mean, it's kind of obvious. So what do you mean you don't know? How do I know, but you don't? And will you graduate, Yale?
As clear as possible, what are our red lines? What are the things that we're willing to be accommodating on? And what are the things that we absolutely must have? And as the president has said ad nauseum, and I think I've said it a lot too, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We want to see not just the commitment to not have a nuclear weapon, but the commitment to work with us on a process to ensure that not just now, not just when Donald Trump is president, but years down the road, that the Iranians are not rebuilding that nuclear capability. And that's what we're trying to accomplish in the negotiation. Sorry, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, just for Americans at home, because this has been going on for several weeks now. I think what people just want to know is, do you personally believe that the Iranians will come to a deal? Because we keep seeing this over and over again when they go back and forth.
So do I personally believe it? The honest answer is, how could I possibly know, right? And you negotiate with people, and sometimes you feel like you're making progress, and sometimes you feel like you're not making progress. What I think is that the Iranians want to make a deal. What I think is that the Iranians recognize that a nuclear weapon is the red line for the United States of America, that they've internalized.
Yeah, I know, bro. They've never really internalized it. They've internalized it themselves that they've never wanted a nuclear weapon. And then here's the thing, though. A lot of people always do ask this, and this is a really good question. How come Israel's allowed to have nukes that they're allowed to keep secret from the world so we can give them funding, but Iran can't have it? I mean, Iran got enemies too. They got existential threats in the region too. But here's the thing, though. I don't want Iran to have a nuke. Most people don't. But here's the problem. We can't sit here and be hard on Iran on their nuclear program. I'm gonna be real with you. They've actually allowed inspections on. They're part of the non-proliferation treaty. So they're more cooperative with us than Israel has been. But we're just so hard on Iran. We're ready to go to war and bomb their entire country to hell over a nuclear program that we gave them, by the way.
That, but we're not going to know until we're actually putting pen to paper on signing a deal. We've had a lot of drafts, a lot of, a lot of pieces of paper going back and forth, but I will not say with confidence that we're going to reach a deal until we're actually signing a negotiated settlement here. And I think that it's ultimately up to the Iranians whether they're willing to meet us, because I think we're certainly doing a good job, and we're certainly negotiating in good faith. We're going to have to see what ultimately happens with them. I can't say with confidence because I don't know what's in the mind of the other side. John.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to ask you about that $1.8 billion fund set up, weaponization fund as it's being called. Why should taxpayers be paying to settle a $10 billion lawsuit that was brought by the President of the United States? And should people that attacked the Capitol building and assaulted police officers, should they be eligible? Should they receive money? Should they receive money from this fund?
Well, let me say a couple of things about that. First, John, I think in some ways the media has misrepresented what this is actually about. This is about compensating Americans for the lawfare that we saw under the last administration. And by the way, anybody can apply for it. Republicans can apply for it. Democrats can apply for it. As you know, the President of the United States has pardoned a number of Democrats who he felt were actually subject to this lawfare. I mean, if Hunter Biden wants to apply for this particular fund, he is welcome to. It's going to go through a normal process where we vet everything, where we try to identify whether people's claims are actually legitimate. But here's the question. When you say, why should taxpayers fund this? Whenever the United States government incurs legal expenses, it pays out those legal expenses. When it's settling a lawsuit, it pays out money to settle that lawsuit. And the question is a dollar of this money going to the Trump administration? No. Is a dollar of this money going to Donald Trump personally? No. Is a dollar of this money going to Donald Trump's family? No. The people that would get the money are people, some of whom have been prosecuted completely disproportionate to any crime they've ever committed. Like, let's just take a couple of examples. Tina Peters is this woman who is about to get out of prison, thanks in large part to the president's good work in Colorado. This is a woman who, at worst, if you believe everything that the prosecutors said about her, committed misdemeanor trespassing, and somebody threw the book at her, this innocent grandmother was going to spend 10 years in prison, completely disproportionate to any misdemeanor trespassing that I've ever seen. Was that fair? No. Is it reasonable for her to get some compensation for the fact that she was treated unfairly? I think the answer is yes. And I think that what we're going to see, hopefully, is...
I mean, look, if they're all extreme cases like that, then for sure, I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement. We can all be in agreement about extreme cases like that. But if there are some petty cases, people are going to be upset.
The entire country, led by this Department of Justice, turning the page on the lawfare. What I would like to propose, and I think the Democrats, hopefully they're willing to meet us halfway here. I won't hold my breath. But what I would propose is something very simple, that if you are willing to turn the page on Joe Biden's lawfare, why don't we prosecute people? Very simple principle. Why don't we prosecute people who violate the law? Let's not prosecute people because they said the wrong thing or because they had the wrong political candidate or because they had the wrong viewpoint. And I think part of turning the page on that is to actually ensure the real victims of that lawfare receive some compensation. That's what this fund is going to be targeted at. And again, there's going to be a process to ensure that that money is only given to people who have actually, I hate to say earned it, but the people who actually were really mistreated by the previous administration and Department of Justice.
Go ahead. I understand that everybody is eligible to apply for this fund. I mean, you're eligible, but I assume you're not going to apply and you don't think you should get money out of this fund. So isn't it just as easy to say that people that attacked police officers should not get taxpayer money from this fund?
Well, look, John, we're not trying to give money to anybody who attacked a police officer. We're trying to give...
I mean, here's the thing, though, but in this case, this guy has a point. But if that guy who attacked a police officer was charged disproportionately, where, all right, you attack a police officer, well, it isn't 10, 15 years in jail. Like, I know it's a pretty egregious crime, but I mean, let's be real, though. Some people bumped into a police officer and they got like years in jail for that. Now, or some people really got the book thrown at them, like that lady who was caught trespassing. So yeah, in some of those cases, yeah, people who allegedly attack police officers are probably going to get some compensation. Why? Because they was charged disproportionately. So if the regular charge was, let's say, I don't know, like 5 years, well, they got 8 to 10.
Not give money. We're trying to compensate people where the book was thrown at them. They were mistreated by the legal system. Sometimes, we do have, John, in this country, innocent until proven guilty. We do have people who were accused of attacking law enforcement officers. That doesn't mean that we're going to completely ignore some of the claims that they're going to make. We're going to evaluate these things on a case-by-case basis. And if we think that somebody, whatever they were accused of, if we think that somebody was unfairly prosecuted and deserves just compensation, then that's what this fund is going to exist to provide. It's just going to correct a wrong, and I think that's a good thing. And I'd encourage everybody, Democrat, Republican, Independent, let's turn the page on this thing that we did under the last administration where we tried to throw people in prison because they had the wrong politics. Let's throw people in prison who broke the law. I think this fund is a good part of getting justice for the people who were wrongly treated. Back there, yeah.
You, sir. Just to follow up on that quickly.
I mean,
does that mean
the controversial part about that is going to be, can we all agree about who's been wrongly treated? And if not, people are going to start complaining about who get compensated.
People that were violent, that were convicted, were mistreated? Are you saying that?
Well, you're asking me to comment on hypotheticals and on any number of dozens of cases. Here's the thing. We're going to look at everything case by case. As you know, every single case has its own.
Oh, guys, like the video, guys. Make sure you double tap that screen and like the video. And if you could do me a favor as well, go ahead and follow me on Kick and Rumble at S.E.T Media. Appreciate the support, but make sure we're double tapping that screen and smashing that like button.
Details. Every single case has, there are things about it that maybe don't meet the eye. We're just going to look at every case by case. That's all I'm saying. I'm not committing to giving anybody money or committing to giving no one money. What I'm committing to is a legal process to review these claims and to make sure that people who are mistreated by their government get a little bit of compensation because of it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Yes, sir. I realize that the pointer finger is not as precise as I thought it was. The guy I have this cheat sheet, but the problem with being 41 years old is I'm blinder than I was a few years ago. So we'll say blue blazer, blue ties. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to ask a quick follow-up on Iran, but first I'd like to ask you about fentanyl. Fentanyl sourced largely from China killed about 403,000 Americans over the past 7 years, according to CDC data. That's one in every 850 Americans who died. White House counterterrorism director Sebastian Gorka said last week that China's exports amounted to the targeted killing of Americans and war by other means. Do you agree with that assessment? And what is the Trump administration doing to punish and deter China, especially since the Supreme Court struck down the fentanyl tariffs?
So go ahead and ask the second question, because I'll try to take each question and then I'll try to answer them and then we'll go on. And if you ask two questions, I can only guarantee that I'll answer one. In fact, I'm a politician. Maybe I won't even answer the one that you asked, but I will try at least to answer one question.
Well, I'd love to hear the fentanyl response too, if not today, sometime.
Go ahead.
On Iran, is Russia taking possession of the enriched uranium in Iran a plausible end to the war? And if not, why not?
So first, on the Russia taking possession of the enriched uranium, look, these things are being discussed through negotiation. That is not currently our plan. That has never been our plan. I've seen some reporting on that. I don't know where it comes from, but the president's going to continue to negotiate it.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know where it's coming from either, because the Iranians want to hold on to that 60% enrichment, and they're not willing to give it up to, definitely not us, and none of their allies either. They want to give it up on their own terms when America's abided by what, a 10 to 20 year memorandum of understanding, where if we can abide by a pretty much a treaty of non-aggression, then they'll consider giving up their enriched uranium. But if not, then they're just going to push closer to a nuke
deal. So that is not currently the plan of the United States government. The Iranians have not raised it. My sense is that's not something the Iranians would be particularly excited about. And I know the president isn't particularly excited about it either, but who knows? I'm not going to make pre-commitments in a negotiation on any particular topic. On the question of fentanyl, a lot of people have died from fentanyl. Absolutely. A lot of it has come from mainland China. We're certainly aware of that. But here's what I'll say. First of all, we've made incredible strides under Donald Trump's leadership to cut down on fentanyl deaths. If you look at the number of people,
a country floods fentanyl into y'all country, and then you let in like 600,000 of their students to take what, American positions in colleges. Did that sound like we're kind of being hard on them? Did that sound like we truly care about the fentanyl deaths? So we're kind of rewarding them a little bit.
People who died in 2026, it's going to be lower than the number who died in 2025, which is way lower than the number who died in 2024. This is one of the things that I think all Americans, we should be celebrating. And I'm certainly proud of the president's leadership for making this possible. We ran, if you remember, in November of 2024 on a very simple idea that a lot of fentanyl came from East Asia. It was smuggled into Central and South America, and then the cartels would bring it into our country, and a lot of our people would get poisoned and killed because of it. We said if you got control of the southern border, we would see a substantial reduction in the number of people who died from fentanyl overdoses in the United States of America, and that is exactly what's happened. Now, yes, the president has raised this with President Xi any number of times. I know it came up during the meeting that they had in China just last week, but it's come up in any number of phone calls, and our sense is that President Xi has been willing to work with us on this. And obviously, we want to continue to ensure that the Chinese work with us as much as possible, because we don't want our people to be poisoned. So we'll keep working on that issue with the Chinese. There's been, I think, a big amount of progress that's been made, but of course, we can make a lot more progress, and we're certainly going to be committed to doing exactly that. Right. Yeah.
Me?
White jacket. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. Natalie with Washington.
Natalie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Does the government need to create a new mandatory review process for new AI models, given the concerns about Mythos? And secondly, in a few days, Pope Leo is going to release his encyclical on artificial intelligence. What influence, if any, do you see the Pope's guidance on AI having to broader society?
Well, I mean, I think when the Pope issues an encyclical on artificial intelligence, it's going to have some influence. I, of course, don't know how much influence. I don't know exactly what it's going to say. But I think when the leader of the world's largest Christian denomination speaks on an issue like that, it's certainly going to have some influence. And I'm sure it'll contain a lot of insights, some of which I'll probably agree with, some of which I may not. But I think that it's going to be a very, very important document. And I think that, one of the things I always found fascinating about Pope Leo is that he chose the name Leo the 14th, which of course is recollecting Leo the 13th. Leo the 13th was the Pope during a period of incredible industrial transformation in the entire world. Of course, that industrial transformation, according to a lot of people, led to the rise of fascism and communism in Europe. I think it was interesting that Leo the 14th chose that name to maybe apply Christian social teaching in a new era with a new technological innovation, in the same way that the Industrial Revolution was the technological innovation of its time. So I think it'll be fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading it. My guess is it's going to have a lot of influence on the question of what our policy is going to be. Look, what we're trying to do in the Trump administration is very simple. The president wants us to be pro-innovation. He wants us to win the.
Well, at least he ain't try to call them a Chinese spy like Kevin O'Leary. Like any criticism he faced about the data center or AI, he's like, well, what about China? What about China? It's like, yeah, well, here's the thing. China don't really care that most of their people won't have jobs. China doesn't care about the pollution. They don't care about how these data centers are going to drag on the resources of their people. They do not care. In America, we do. So it's kind of crazy how these guys who are China hawks are low-key starting to act like these guys in China who just don't give a fuck about their people.
AI race against all other countries in the world. He recognizes that AI is going to be an important tool, not just for our economy, but for our military. And so he wants to ensure that we are winning that particular race. We also want to make sure that we're protecting people. We're protecting people's data. We're protecting people's privacy. I think with this Mythos release, one of the things that we're very focused on, of course, is whether not necessarily the developers of Mythos, but whether some other bad actor could use Mythos to target various cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So it's something that we're working in a collaborative way with the technology companies, and we're just trying to make sure that the American people are as safe as possible. I'm not going to get ahead of the executive order or any other actions that are going to come out, but we're trying to balance those two things. We want to be pro-innovation. We recognize, artificial intelligence could be great. It could help us find cures to diseases that currently, people are dying from or suffering from. It also does have some downsides, and we're trying to balance that safety against innovation. And we think that we've got the right balance here in the Trump administration, but it's something we're going to have to keep on working on, because that's just the nature of these technologies is they certainly change. Let's go. Is that Reagan all the way in the back? Daily Caller? There we go. Okay. I figured out finally how the seating chart works.
I want to ask you about the anti-fraud task force. You previously mentioned that Ilhan Omar seemed to have committed immigration fraud. Do you anticipate an indictment against her, an indictment related to that situation?
Yeah, so
I don't know about the immigration fraud, but for sure there's been some financial fraud that's going on, going down. Like, what was it? When she finally, corrected her books, she went from like having a net worth of 30 million to 95,000. So yeah, she's definitely done some financial fraud or some type of financial crime. But immigration crime, still, there has not been nothing that popped up on that. Well, on my radar, but let's see what JD Vance says.
Reagan, I don't want to prejudge an investigation. You read the things about Ilhan Omar and about, who she married and whether she didn't marry this person or that person. It certainly seems like something fishy is there, but everybody's entitled to equal justice under the laws. So we're going to investigate it. We're going to take a look at it. If we think that there's a crime, we're going to prosecute that crime. And that's something the Department of Justice is looking at right now.
And here's the crazy thing is, there's a lot of people in MAGA who literally think that the crime is, she married her brother. She married her brother, when let's be real, if you actually trace back the person on her marriage certificate, yeah, he was born in British. He was born in Britain, or the UK. AKA his people, you can trace his parents. It's like all the way back to the UK, and Ilhan Omar's parents came here in the 90s from the conflicts that were going on in Somalia, thanks to Bill Clinton. So yeah, two different sets of parents, and their parents may have came from the same area, but they went two different places. And you can literally trace Ilhan Omar's first husband. It's not that hard.
Mr. Go ahead.
Based on what you've seen during your work on this anti-fraud task force, do you believe anything should change about our immigration or refugee policies to stop fraud in the United States?
Well, yeah. Look, one thing I'd say is that the biggest immigration fraud that existed under the Biden administration, it's not just that they let a flood of people across the southern border. That was obviously a very major problem and something I'm proud of the president for stopping. But it's also that they allowed the asylum and refugee claimant process to become totally fraudulent. And so here's what would happen, right? You would take a person who in normal cases would just be a traditional economic immigrant. Whether you let them into the country or not, they're trying to come because they want a better job, okay? They would come into the country and say that they were fleeing persecution, and they would say that they were an asylum claimant. And then effectively what the Biden administration would do is say, okay, you're an asylee, go into the interior of the country, here's a work permit, maybe come back in 10 or 12 years for your hearing on whether you actually have a legitimate asylum claim. So what did that mean? That meant that person was just completely given amnesty and released into the interior of the country. Well, what if that person was a criminal? What if that person actually had a violent history? We didn't do any of the work necessary to ensure that the people coming into our country claiming to be asylum claimants actually had anything legitimate or anything good in their background. So that is a serious problem. It is something that we have fixed in the Trump administration.
It's like literally, I was saying this, like we took sad stories and we just went with it. Somebody would just be leaving their country just to come over here. Don't really have a good reason besides just don't like what's going on in their country politically or economically. And I'm gonna be real with you, that's not a good asylum claim. But they'd sit there and tell us that, oh man, you know, they're hunting me down, the cartel or the government, they want me dead. It's because I'm trans, or it's because I'm gay, or it's because I'm too liberal. And we accept the sad story and we just let them in without corroborating it at all.
But fundamentally, that loophole, you're going to see sometime in the future, somebody is going to try to exploit that loophole. And it's one of the things that we're very focused on in the fraud task force is making sure that the people who exploited that loophole are actually prosecuted for it, assuming they committed a crime. Yes. So I don't know your name. You have a beautiful cross necklace, though. So go ahead.
Kara Castanova from Lens LTV.
Hi,
Thank you so
Kara.
much. I have two questions. One of them is going back to the $1.8 billion fund, not to keep beating that, but sadly, Democrat lawmakers are misrepresenting that fund.
I agree.
Yes.
It's a great question.
And sadly, some of the mainstream media doesn't understand the magnitude of the political persecution of J6ers. So if a violent offender like a J6er was still over sentenced and mistreated, literally some of them were sentenced to 24 years in prison, put in unconstitutional pre-trial detention, literally tortured in cages, wouldn't that person still be able to apply for the fund because of due process? And
this is why we say, just to answer that very briefly, this is why we say we have to evaluate this thing case by case, right? We don't in the United States say that everybody who's accused of a crime is automatically guilty in a court of public opinion. You've got to actually look at this stuff and figure out what were they accused of. Maybe they did something bad even, but what they were accused of was way worse of what they actually did. Maybe they had their entire lives ruined in a totally disproportionate way. That's fundamentally illegitimate and political. And I find, just Carol, on this point, one of the interesting things about the American media is there is a fascination. If you go to any American law school, there are these, prisoner rights clinics. There are people who objectively committed heinous crimes, but the American media and the American Legal Academy has decided that even though they committed bad crimes, their sentence was disproportionate. They were mistreated in some way. You know who never, ever gets an ounce of sympathy when it comes to that disproportionate sentencing is people who voted for Donald Trump and participated in the January 6th protest. Go to your second question.
About Pete Davidson, he made a horrific, obscene joke about the murder of your friend Charlie Kirk. What does this still say about where our political divisions have gone, and what are you specifically doing to bridge the divide, especially as a potential future president?
Well, sorry, who was it that said something?
Davidson made a really obscene joke about Charlie Kirk. So what are you doing as a potential future candidate or president to bridge the divide?
Well, first of all, I'm not a potential future candidate. I'm a vice president.
I mean, come on now. It's like I would tell her there's nothing I could do about a roast. Everybody was going at each other's neck. If you looked at, there was very effed up jokes that were coming from both the left and the right on that stage. So get over it. It's a roast. If you don't know what a roast is, go look at the roast of Donald Trump. Trump will tell you what a roast is as well. He went through one too.
President, and I really like my job, and I'm going to try to do as good of a job as I can. But let me just say this. So you talked about Pete Davidson, who said something bad about Charlie Kirk. Look, Charlie was a very, very dear friend, but more importantly than that, Charlie was a father of two beautiful kids, and he did not deserve to have all of those moments with his kids, all of those moments with his beautiful wife taken from him in the way that happened. I would expect everybody with a heart or a conscience would say, whatever we agreed or disagreed with about his particular viewpoints, this is a tragedy, and it's totally unacceptable that it happens in the United States of America. To their credit, a lot of the reporters in this room, even though I don't agree with their politics, they were open about the fact that what happened to Charlie was disgusting and it shouldn't happen in a civilized country. You talk about bridging the divide. I mean, one thing that happened that hits, not quite literally close to home, but there was a very terrible shooting that happened today at a Muslim community center. It seems like 3 people are dead, plus the shooters. And, that community center is actually very close to this restaurant that Usha and I go to every time we visit. Her family lives in San Diego. She was born and raised in San Diego. Every time we go to San Diego, we go to this restaurant that is like maybe a 5-minute drive from this community center. And I found out about it actually on my way to the White House this morning. And I texted her, I said, would you have known anybody who was like involved in this? And she said, absolutely. I would have known some people, or at least their parents, who might have actually used the services at this community center. I don't know a single person who would say anything other than what I'm about to say, which is that type of violence in the United States of America is reprehensible. And I encourage every single American to pray for everybody who was involved and affected by it. We don't want that to happen in our country, and may God rest the souls of the people who lost their lives. What I do find a little distressing is that while every person I know, every politically conservative person I know would say exactly what I said about these innocent people who were killed, there were a lot of people who were celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And I think one way that we can bridge the divide is just have a very simple principle in this country. Number one, we don't want the government throwing people in prison because they have bad politics, however you define bad politics. Number two, and way more importantly, political violence, wherever it comes from, is unacceptable in the United States of America. Let's talk with one another, not shoot each other when we disagree. I think that's the principle that everybody in this room agrees with. It's certainly the principle the President of the United States agrees with. Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm gonna try to read this here. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, that was kind of interesting, so I'm going to give you the question. All right, go ahead.
So last week, the Pentagon halted deployment of 4,000 troops, U.S. troops, to Poland. This is in direct contradiction to President Trump explicitly promised not to reduce the troop level in Poland. So I'm going to ask you this question, which many people in Poland think. Why are you rewarding Putin and punishing your best ally in Europe?
Well, first of all, I'd say there's been no president who's done more, frankly, to ensure that Ukraine survived the invasion of Russia than Donald Trump. As he famously said, Obama gave him sheets, I gave him javelins, and it was those javelins that ensured that Ukraine still has its territorial sovereignty. What he's also said is that he wants to pursue an American policy that focuses on the interests of the United States. And part of that foreign policy is not to reward Putin or not to punish a country like Poland, which we love. We love Poland. We love the Polish people. No. What we're trying to do, what our foreign policy is geared towards, is promoting European independence and sovereignty. We want Europe to take more ownership over its own territorial integrity. We want Europe to step up in a big way. Now, I think you said 4,000 troops. We've not reduced the troop levels in Poland by 4,000 troops. What we did is that we delayed a troop deployment that was going to go to Poland. That's not a reduction. That's just a standard delay in rotation that sometimes happens in these situations. But here's the fundamental problem. Poland is capable of defending itself with a lot of support from the United States. We're not talking about pulling every single American troop out of Europe. We're talking about shifting some resources around in a way that maximizes American security. I don't think that's bad for Europe. That's encouraging Europe to take more ownership. The United States cannot be the policeman of the world. We want to be good allies. We want to make.
I mean, I'll be real with you. This war done proved that we can no longer be the policemen of the world. I mean, we've been saying that like out loud for a minute now, but this war done pretty much solidified it. That we can no longer patrol the world the way we used to, or if we ever really could. We was kind of just using the threat of our military might the entire time. And, and nobody really pulled our card on it. So as it stands right now, yeah, I mean, NATO might have to find a way to protect themselves because Russia's looking at us and they're going like, well, if you can't stop Iran, how the hell you going to stop me? How the hell you going to stop Xi? Like that's what the world is like kind of asking themselves right now.
Make sure that our troop presence promotes regional stability in Europe. The president has not said, though he could, the president has not said that he's taken all of the troops out of Europe, but Europe has to stand on its own 2 feet. And that's something that he's been consistent of, frankly, not even since the beginning of this administration, going back to the first administration, is we have got to have more sovereignty and more of Europe standing on its own 2 feet. That will continue to be our policy in Europe.
Those troops will go eventually to Poland?
What I said is that is it a delay in troop rotation? Those troops could go elsewhere in Europe. We could decide to send them elsewhere. We actually haven't made the final determination about where those troops are ultimately going to go. But what I'm saying is it is not accurate to say that we are pulling a bunch of troops out. It is a very small and very minor thing. And I think, frankly, a lot of the European media, again, is overreacting to this a bit. And here's one thing I'll say about this. Look, I have, for my entire life, I'm 41 years old. For my entire life, I have heard chirping from the European media about everything that's wrong with the United States of America. We don't have this. We don't have that. We don't spend enough on healthcare, even though part of the reason why we spend so much on defense was because we have tens of thousands of troops in Europe. I think that if the European media wants to attack the president of the United States, they need to start looking in the mirror. All he has said is that we're going to be good allies. We're going to be good friends. We're going to be trading partners, but it is reasonable for Europe to take a little bit more ownership over its continental integrity.
Well, yeah, that's true. Like I said, I've always been about getting out of NATO, one, because they've gotten too spoiled on our military, on our military might. They just depend on it way too much, to the point where they were even trying to pull us into a conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Like, let's be real. If they had their own military might, Lord knows they wouldn't be asking us for it. But then again, if they did, they'd probably pop off World War III with Russia. But here's the thing, though, is I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they didn't back us up when it came to the Strait. Well, that's not what the agreement was built on. But we can't sit here and say that some of these guys don't pay their bills, but they still get full U.S. support. And that's outrageous. Like, you better pay your bills fully so we can give our support fully, or we're just getting played.
Caitlin.
I have a question on the.
Oh, guys, double tap that screen, like the video, guys. We got like 16 of y'all in here. Do me a favor and double tap that screen, like the video.
But just to follow up, you previously told me that anyone who assaulted a police officer on January 6th should go to prison. So why not rule out giving them taxpayer-funded money?
Well, Caitlin, what I said is we're going to look at everything case by case. Because, Caitlin, there are people who I don't know their individual circumstances, and I don't rule things out categorically when I know nothing about a person's individual circumstances. Let's say a person is accused, let's say hypothetically, a person is accused of doing something that they never actually did, that they got a kangaroo court, that they had a judge who mistreated them. I think that we should look at those things case by case. We're not making commitments to give anybody money. We're just making commitments to look at things case by case.
I mean, but just to follow up on the war, you last week denied that the president said he was not taking Americans' financial situations into consideration when he's making decisions on the Iran war. He was asked about that again. He stood by it, called it a perfect statement, and said he would make it again.
Damn.
Do you believe that Americans' financial situations should be taken into consideration when you're making decisions?
And that's the most effed up thing, is like this man Trump is doubling down on the, oh yeah, well, I don't really care about Americans' affordability problems when it comes to war with Iran, even though this whole war with Iran is the cause of the furthering problem of affordability for Americans. Yeah, I just don't care. It's like, bro, it's like he's just trying to sink his chances in the midterms at this point. He just don't, like, I don't even think he care about the midterms at this point, guys.
See, Caitlin, what you did is you misrepresented the question that I was asked, and then you misrepresented the answer that I gave. What I said is that a question that was asked where the president allegedly said that he didn't care about Americans' financial situations. He never said that. What he said is that it was totally taken out of context. What he said is that when he is negotiating with the Iranians, he's focused on the national security objectives that he's trying to achieve. Of course, the president has a mandate to be focused on a number of things. And I guarantee you, every single day, I have conversations with him about it. Every single day, he's worried about his fellow Americans. He wants them to be prosperous. He wants them to thrive. He wants them to have good jobs. That's why we've done the things and taken the steps that we've taken in order to create record job growth. in order to create record wage growth, in order to induce trillions of dollars of new investment into our country. That's because he cares about that stuff. What he also said is that when he's talking to the Iranians, he's talking to the Iranians about questions, of course, of national security, like their nuclear program. You could hold two thoughts in your head at the same time, that the president cares about financial security for Americans, but also when he's negotiating with the Iranians, he's talking about the issues that are germane to the concerns of that particular conflict.
Going back to the price tag for this DOJ fund, $1.8 billion. You have people that can't afford groceries. Gas is high. People are making sacrifices in their personal lives to accommodate for this rise in prices. People are telling us that they feel financially worse off. They're very concerned about the uncertainty. How can you justify that amount of taxpayer money for that fund when people are struggling? What do you say to Americans who wonder why this fund is getting all this money and I can't afford basic life amenities?
Well, let me say a couple things about that. First of all, you said 1.